First contact, the sky over New York City turned red. Not a warm sunset red, but a deep, angry red. It looked like something was bleeding in the sky. People stopped walking. Phones were raised. Children pointed. Some laughed nervously. Others stood, frozen. No one understood what they were seeing. Up above, a shape slowly appeared. It didn't move like a plane. It didn't look like anything built by humans. It was massive, dark, and silent, like a mountain floating in the air. Satellites across the world picked up the same thing. An object the size of a small moon had entered Earth's orbit. It didn't respond to any messages, no signals, no warning. It just arrived. Governments called emergency meetings. The United Nations held a secret session. Generals shouted. Scientists looked pale. Some whispered one word behind closed doors: invasion. But to the aliens watching Earth from above, this was not war. It was routine. The Zarvek Dominion had done this many times before. They had conquered thousands of worlds. Every time it was the same. The species below panicked, fought, and fell. This planet would be no different, or so they thought. In a small apartment in Delhi, a girl named Ayanya sat alone in front of her computer, 17 years old. Thin, smart, and always curious. While the world panicked, she was digging into satellite data. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a scientist. But she was a hacker. She opened a strange signal. It was bouncing between deep space and a hidden frequency, static at first. Then voices. Not human voices. They didn't sound angry. They didn't even sound excited. They sounded bored. Unit 6 to 9. Earth resistance rating 0. Recommended action: memory sweep, neural control, full absorption. Estimated time for domination, 6.3 days. Anya's heart pounded. She copied the audio and sent it to a trusted online group. "This isn't an attack," she typed. "This is a takeover. Above the Earth, inside the alien command ship, the Zarvek High Commander Valthier stood in a room filled with glowing walls. Information flowed into his mind. This species called themselves humans. They had nukes, wars, pride. But their minds were open, soft, easy to bend. No real psychic defense. Valthier had seen many species scream and cry during conquest. But humans would break quietly, he believed. They would lose their minds before they lost their cities. He gave the order. Around the world, strange things started happening. People forgot where they were. Names disappeared from minds. Soldiers dropped weapons, confused about why they were fighting. "It's not a virus," doctors said. "Something is attacking the brain." Anya watched news clips. Her hands trembled. She knew what was coming, but she also knew something the aliens didn't. Humans don't give up easily. In a hidden base under the Himalayas, a man named Dr. Elias watched the data closely. He had worked on psychic defense for the military. Nobody believed him back then. Now the world needed his help. He saw a pattern in the signal. It was not just an attack, it was a test. "They're studying us," he said, "probing our minds before they hit harder." The UN called for silence. Internet was shut down in many countries. People were told to stay home. But the fear was growing. And that fear fed the Zarvek. They didn't understand human emotions. They had evolved past that long ago. But fear? Fear was a tool, yet something was off. Not all humans were affected the same way. Anya's mind stayed sharp. Her friends, too. She posted again. They can control fear. But maybe that's all they can control. On the alien ship, Valthier frowned. Some humans were adapting, resisting. That had never happened before. His second-in-command spoke, confused. "Commander, we detected something strange." "What is it?" "Some human brains are pushing back." Valthier turned. "That is not possible." But deep in Earth's system, human minds were starting to resist. Not because they were stronger, because they were used to fear. Anya stared at her screen. She played the alien voice again. Over and over. She zoomed into one word: Neural control. Then, she whispered to herself, they don't understand us at all. Above Earth, the Zarvek prepared their next move. On the ground, humanity held its breath. But the war for Earth had already begun, not with guns, with the mind. The invasion begins. It started with the dreams. People across the world woke up screaming, not from nightmares and from something worse, from memories that weren't theirs. In Tokyo, a soldier dreamed of a planet he had never seen, burning under a red sky. In Rio, a nurse saw her own hands destroying cities she had never visited. In Moscow, a child drew strange symbols on the wall, symbols from a language no one on Earth had ever known, except now it was everywhere. Governments thought it was mass panic. Scientists thought it was a shared hallucination. But Dr. Elias, hidden deep in the Himalayas, saw the truth. They are not invading with ships first, he whispered. They are invading from inside our minds. Anya didn't sleep at all. After hearing the alien transmission, her mind was on fire. She had posted the signal to a secure group, but half the users had gone silent. Not offline, blank. Their accounts were active, but their words were gone, their personalities wiped. It was like talking to machines wearing human names. In the skies above, the Zarvek Dominion watched with cold interest. The commander, Valthier, stood inside the mine chamber. Thousands of human thoughts passed through, the air like waves. Joy, fear, confusion, rebellion. They are noisy, his second-in-command said. Valthier's expression didn't change. They won't be for long. He reached forward, touched a glowing control, and activated Phase 1. On Earth, the invasion began, but there were no lasers, no giant walkers, no explosions. Instead, something terrifying spread in silence. People started forgetting who they were, not just names, not just places. Memories faded like smoke. Brothers forgot sisters. Mothers stared at their children like strangers. Doctors called it global cognitive decay. Militaries called it mass disruption. But Anya, she called it war. In London, a military base was abandoned in 2 hours, not because they lost a battle, because the soldiers forgot what they were doing. In Cairo, planes crashed mid-air when pilots froze mid-thought. In New York, police dropped their weapons, unable to remember how they worked. But in a hidden resistance, network growing online, Anya gathered the survivors, those who still remembered. They called themselves the Clear Minds. Dr. Elias found the same pattern. The ones who've faced fear before, he said, studying their brain scans. They resist better. War survivors, trauma victims, people who had battled loss, grief, chaos. Their minds were not soft. Their memories held strong. Anya asked, "Are we immune?" Elias shook his head. Not immune. Just hardened. On the alien ship, Valthier noticed the anomaly. Unit 12-7, explain resistance zones. Certain brains adapt faster. Unexpected behavior. Dangerous potential. Human emotion. Weaponized. Valthier frowned for the first time in decades. Anya's team hacked into an abandoned satellite network. From the sky they could see the damage. Major cities in chaos, highways empty, airports shut down. But in some rural villages, there was still movement. People farming, people surviving. Anya zoomed in. Old women, children, survivors of hard lives. They're still thinking, she whispered. The aliens can't break what's already broken. Meanwhile, resistance cells around the world began fighting back in new ways. They built memory walls, sound recordings of loved ones, images, smells, anything to keep their identities intact. In Berlin, a father tattooed his family's names on his arms. In Seoul, people sang songs aloud every hour to remember who they were. Fear was everywhere. But now, it was also a shield. Inside the Zarvek ship, something changed. They sent a probe down, small, invisible, silent. It landed in central India. near where Ayanya's team had set up camp. Anya detected it. "They're watching us now," she told Elias. "Good," he said. "Why?" He smiled sadly. "Because that means we scare them." The next day, something new happened. A signal broadcasted across all screens, every country, every device. No logos, no color, just a black screen and a deep voice. Not robotic, not angry, cold, calm, alien. "Your minds are fragile, your bodies weaker, your history full of war, your planet small. You will not survive us, but your fear will live forever." Then silence. But something went wrong for them that night. On a live camera feed in Ukraine, a group of resistance fighters took down a Zarvek drone. They didn't use missiles. They surrounded it, held hands, and sang a lullaby from their childhood, a song of mourning and love. The drone crashed. The signal it sent back was corrupted. On the alien ship, alarms rang. Valther saw the message flash on his screen. "Error. Host mind incompatible. Unknown resilience. Targets unpredictable." Back in the resistance camp, Ayanya listened to the lullaby recording again. "They don't understand," she said. "What?" Elias asked. "They think fear weakens us, but fear is why we fight." And far above, in the stars, the invincible, conquerors of galaxies began to feel something they had no word for. A tension, a chill, a signal from the heart of Earth. It wasn't a scream, it was a warning. We remember who we are. What they didn't expect, the Zarvek were not afraid of death. They didn't even fear failure. But there was one thing they could not understand. And what you don't understand, you cannot control. Commander Valther stood in the shadow core of the mothership. His glowing eyes stared at thousands of memory strands flowing across the walls. Thoughts, feelings, memories from millions of humans. Most were fading, collapsing. Good. But some were fighting back. He focused on one. A girl, brown-skinned, black hair, bright eyes. Name, Ayanya Singh. Memory pattern, unstable, chaotic, powerful. Valther had crushed stronger minds in seconds. He had shattered entire civilizations with a single psychic pulse. But this one, it echoed back. On Earth, Ayanya couldn't sleep. Her dreams weren't hers anymore. She saw cities that didn't exist, oceans that spoke, stars that whispered things she didn't understand. And sometimes she saw him, a tall creature in dark armor standing in fire, watching her, trying to enter her thoughts. "You're not real," she told herself. "And neither are they," a voice answered, but she wasn't sure if it came from her own head. Dr. Elias had news. Bad news. "They're learning faster," he said, showing brainwave patterns. "They thought we were weak, emotional creatures. Now, they're starting to study our emotions, and maybe use them." Anya looked at the data. The aliens were adapting. Every time humanity pushed back, the Zarvek changed strategy. But there was still something they didn't get. Why fear didn't break humans. In the Philippines, a small fishing village vanished overnight. No screams, no damage. Just gone. When resistance teams investigated, they found walls covered in drawings. Strange eyes, symbols, stars with teeth, and one word scratched into the sand. Remember. Valther began experiments. He captured minds, kept them floating in the ship's thought chambers. He tried feeding them false memories. Endless joy, perfect peace. Silence. They broke. But when he injected fear, pain, loss, chaos, something strange happened. The human minds didn't die. They fought back harder. In Berlin, a teenage boy named Lucas discovered he could hear the alien signal and send one back. Not a message. Not words. A scream. A memory scream of his mother dying in front of him. Raw emotion. Sorrow. Rage. He screamed it into the radio tower. 5 seconds later, a Zarvek drone nearby exploded. Anya and Elias studied this. They're not just feeding on fear, Elias said. They're tasting it, testing it. But now some of us are turning it into a weapon. You mean trauma is our shield? No, Elias said. It's our sword. In the North Atlantic, a Zarvek fleet approached a secret human base. But the base was silent. They entered, only to find recordings playing on every speaker, the final phone calls of soldiers who died in war. Voices full of love, regret, courage. The alien units collapsed. Some disintegrated, others turned on each other. Valthir saw the data. How can pain make them stronger? His ship's AI replied, because they remember why they suffer. The Zarvek never had religion, never had songs, no poetry, no funerals. They erased weakness from their culture long ago. But now, they were watching humans do the one thing no species had ever done during a conquest, get stronger under fear. Valthir called for a meeting of the Mind Lords, ancient leaders of the Dominion, floating in glass towers of light. This species is wrong, he told them. They do not collapse. They evolve. The Mind Lords responded in one voice, then end them before they learn to hunt. But it was already too late. Anya's resistance had reached over 50 countries. They didn't have armies. They had stories. Survivors sent their worst memories to her team, and they turned them into sound weapons, grief grenades, rage waves, truth bombs made of memory. Human sorrow became a virus inside the Zarvek network. Anya stood before a small group of survivors in a ruined stadium in Istanbul. They don't understand us, she said. They thought fear would make us kneel, but fear made us fight. You don't beat monsters by being unafraid. You beat them by being afraid and standing anyway. The crowd didn't cheer. They just nodded because they understood. Meanwhile, something was happening on the Zarvek ship. A low-level psychic drone named Kelreth collapsed. Before dying, it sent one final thought to its commander. I dreamed. I was a human. I felt love. I saw death. And I cried. The room went silent. No Zarvek had cried in 10,000 years. Valthir turned away from the corpse. For the first time in his long life, he felt a shiver. In the sky, a new human signal appeared, not from Earth, from Mars. A small human science base, once silent, had activated again. Their signal, a single word: resist. Valthir looked at the stars. He had conquered galaxies. But now he realized this species wasn't like the others. They weren't afraid of death. They were afraid of forgetting, and that made them dangerous. The resistance, Rise's fear, had changed sides. The great Zarvek Dominion, destroyer of worlds, ruler of galaxies, now stood confused in the shadow of something they never expected: human resistance. Not just survival, retaliation. In a hidden mountain base in Kazakhstan, Anya watched a global map flicker with red lights. Red meant chaos, lost zones. But then green dots began to blink. Green meant something new. Resistance units. 2 months ago, Earth was silent. Broken, almost surrendered. Now, across the world, human survivors were doing the impossible. They were learning how the Zarvek operated, and more importantly, how to break them. Anya stood with Dr. Elias and several new leaders, former soldiers, hackers, medics, monks, poets, different people. One goal: we can't stop the invasion by fighting like them, Anya said. We fight like us. In Africa, a tribe used drums passed down from generations. Their rhythms scrambled alien sensors. In Japan, an old tea master taught rebels how to focus thought energy and resist psychic pressure. In Brazil, dancers painted their pain into color, broadcasting emotional codes the Zarvek couldn't decode. From sorrow came resistance. From resistance came fire. Above the planet, in the cold halls of the mothership, Commander Valthir stared at new reports. Humans now destroying scout drones in over 43 zones, his second said. Mental disruptors increasing in strength. They are adapting. Valthyr's face remained cold, but something stirred inside his mind. Not panic, recognition. They are becoming something else. On Earth, Anya had a plan, not to hide, not to defend, but to strike. She called it Operation Echo. Phase 1. Locate a Zarvek command tower in the mountains of Siberia. Phase 2. Infiltrate. Phase 3. Broadcast a human memory into their central network, a shared trauma, powered by billions of emotions. We're going to make them feel us, she said. Not see us, not hear us, feel us. The team gathered. Luca from Berlin, who had lost his mother. Fatima from Egypt, whose brother was taken. Juno from South Korea, a blind musician who played what memory sounded like. They carried no bombs, they carried grief. Meanwhile, in space, the Zarvek mind lords debated. For the first time in 10,000 years, they argued. They are primitives, one said. Emotion is weakness. No, another replied. Emotion is mutation, and mutation spreads. Back on Earth, Operation Echo began. The team moved through snow and wind, past ruined cities and dead forests. They found the tower. It pulsed with light, alive with alien thought. No doors, no guards, just one opening, shaped like a tear. They entered. Inside, they felt it at once. The pressure, the whispering voices, the cold, not of air, but of memory being pulled. They're scanning us, Elias said. Let them. Anya answered. They reached the core, a floating orb of silver, humming. Anya stepped forward, placed a memory drive into the uplink. This is for everyone you broke, she whispered. The file activated. Millions of memories released at once. A mother holding her dead child. A soldier watching his friends fall. A father hugging a daughter he'd never see again. A poet crying. In silence, a scream, a song. A final goodbye. The Zarvek network crashed. Across the skies, ships dropped suddenly, systems overloaded. Commanders screamed inside their minds as emotions they had never known flooded their neural circuits. Pain, grief, hope. On the mothership, Walter fell to his knees for the first time in his long life. He saw tears form in the corners of his eyes, and somewhere deep inside the Empire's data system, a signal looped. A human voice, broken but strong. We remember, we feel, and we rise. Back on Earth, the team escaped the tower, but not without. Cost Dr. Elias collapsed, his mind too tired, too full. Did it work? He asked, before closing his eyes. Anya held his hand. It worked. The world changed that day. Zarvek ships began retreating from zones they once controlled. Resistance groups tripled overnight. For every memory the Zarvek stole, humanity gave 10 back. Stronger, louder, and unstoppable. In India, street children built memory shields using toys and songs. In Canada, elders told war stories over shortwave radio, disrupting alien scans. In Iran, an old woman painted the story of her lost family on every wall in Tehran. The art made even machines pause. Walter stood alone in his chamber, silent. He replayed the human memory over and over. He couldn't shut it off. He no longer wanted to, because for the first time, he felt alive. But feeling came with cost. And that cost was fear. The resistance had risen. The war had changed. And for the first time in the history of the galaxy, the Zarvek were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. Fear protocol activated. The Zarvek had ruled for 10,000 years. They crushed stars, broke empires, erased entire civilizations like smoke. But now, for the first time in their long, cold history, they felt something they had no word for. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. Commander Valthir stood in silence, staring into the core of the mothership. He had watched 100 worlds fall. He had never hesitated. He had never cried. But now, the memory still echoed. In his mind, the scream, a human memory of a mother losing her child, a father dying in war, a girl standing alone choosing to fight back. It had entered his mind like a virus and it wouldn't leave. The empire was collapsing. Drones malfunctioned, ships crashed, telepaths overloaded, and worse, humans were adapting faster than ever. They had turned sorrow into sound, memory into fire, emotion into armor. Valther knew what came next, and so he gave the order. Prepare the fear protocol. His officers froze. But Commander, it's never been used. We built it for species we could not conquer. Exactly, Valther said, and now, we finally found one. On Earth, the sky changed again. Not red, not dark. It turned silver, like mercury spread across the clouds. It wasn't a weapon, not yet. It was a signal, a warning, a beginning. Anya saw it first on a radar monitor. What is that? Luca asked. Something new, Anya whispered, and not in a good way. Dr. Elias, barely recovered, stood slowly. That's not a weapon, he said. It's a test. They're about to unleash something they never used before. How do you know? Because they're afraid, and fear breeds extremes. Hours later, a sound echoed across the world. Not a voice, not a scream, a pulse. Millions dropped to their knees, not because of pain, but because of memories that weren't theirs. A fisherman in Greece suddenly remembered drowning in an alien ocean. A teacher in Australia felt her bones shatter on a planet made of glass. A child in Kenya dreamed of being hunted by metal beasts with no eyes. They're flooding our minds, Elias gasped. Not erasing, not breaking, just filling us, drowning us. Anya stared at the screen. They're showing us what they've done. All the worlds they destroyed, all the minds they crushed. Why? Luca asked. A silence fell. Because they want us to break ourselves. Above Earth, the Zarvek activated the full protocol. The sky itself began to whisper, "You are alone. You will die. Your pain means nothing. Your hope is a lie." But the voice wasn't real. It was built. A machine-made ghost designed to kill the soul before it kills the body. Around the world, suicide rates spiked. Families turned on each other. Hallucinations increased. Even resistance fighters dropped their weapons in despair. Not because they were weak, but because they were drowning in fear that wasn't theirs. In the middle of it all, Ayanya stood still. The whispers touched her too. Her parents' faces, lost years ago, appeared in the air. Her younger self cried out. Her failures were repeated like a broken song. But she didn't fall. You can't show me anything worse than what I've already lived. And with those words, her mind stayed whole. Elias realized something. They made a mistake, he said, his voice shaking. They tried to weaponize fear again, but now we understand it. We survived fear when it was real. Now they're feeding us lies, and lies can be broken. Anya had a plan. It was impossible, but they had no choice. We need to infiltrate the mothership, she said. And do what? Luca asked. Upload human emotion straight into the core, all of it. Not fear, not pain, everything. Even what they've never felt. You want to infect them? With humanity? Anya nodded. If they want to know who we are, we'll show them. All of it. In the dead of night, a small ship lifted from a snowy valley in Tibet. It carried 5 resistance members. Ayanya, Luca, Fatima, Elias, and Juno, the blind musician who could hear thoughts like music. They broke through the failing Zarvek shield. Drones tried to stop them, but most were glitching, broken by the overload of fear protocol. They landed in the center of the mothership, into a place called the Memory Vault. It was quiet, too quiet. Valther was waiting, but he didn't attack. He just looked tired. Why do you fight? He asked softly. Anya stepped forward. Because fear taught us something you never learned. And what is that? That it's okay to feel. That emotion isn't weakness. It's the reason we don't give up. She placed the drive into the vault core. It glowed, hummed. Millions of memories released at once, not just pain this time, but love, joy, laughter, a baby's first cry. A song sung at a funeral. The look between two people who forgive each other. The feeling of holding someone's hand when the world is ending. The mothership shook. Not from explosions, from awakening. Valther dropped to his knees. His mind saw colors he had no names for. He felt warmth, guilt, peace, longing. Then, he wept, for the first and last time. The fear protocol collapsed. The system shut down. Across the world, the silver sky faded. People stood again, remembered who they were. Not because the fear was gone, but because they chose to feel something greater. On the mothership, Valther whispered one final message to his people. They are not to be destroyed. They are to be respected. They are what we forgot how to be. And with that, the Zarvek began to leave, not defeated, but changed. They came to conquer. They left, haunted. The fall of the Invincible, the Zarvek Empire had conquered over 4,000 planets. They had turned suns into weapons. They had erased entire species from time itself. They thought they were invincible. They were wrong. The fear protocol had failed. The mothership was damaged. Its systems, once perfect, now shook with every human emotion sent into its heart. Millions of Zarvek across the galaxy, soldiers, drones, commanders began to feel something they had no defenses against: guilt, grief, longing. It wasn't just the fall of a fleet. It was the collapse of an idea that fear could control the universe forever. Inside the memory vault, deep in the core of the mothership, Ayanya and her team stood in silence. The memory weapon had worked, but it came at a cost. Dar Elias was gone, his mind overloaded by the very feelings he helped deliver. His last words were simple. Don't let them forget. Commander Valther, once proud and emotionless, now sat alone in the Chamber of Echoes, the command center of the Zarvek mind fleet. He saw himself in memories he didn't own. He watched a child starve on a world they conquered. He saw a soldier cry over a broken home. He felt sorrow. This is what they carry, he whispered, and this is what they survived. On Earth, something strange happened. The sky cleared. The air lightened. Zarvek ships in orbit began drifting, turning away. Some fell. Some vanished. Some simply stopped moving. Resistance fighters held their breath. Was this surrender? Was it peace? Or something else? But in the far edges of the Zarvek network, not all were ready to fall. A hidden mind lord, one older than Valther, known only as Krail, activated the final override. It wasn't a weapon. It was a judgment. A purge. If we cannot rule, Krail said, then we shall erase everything. A massive dark fleet began to move. Ships not seen in centuries. Black as night. No windows. No life. They were machines, built for one thing: erase, burn, forget. Anya received the warning from a damaged Zarvek drone that had surrendered. Its voice glitched as it spoke. New fleet approaching. Not like others. No mind, no mercy, no purpose. Only end. Fatima whispered. They're sending ghosts to erase us. Then we don't wait, Anya said. We go to them. A final mission was prepared. Small human crew, one stolen Zarvek ship, and one destination: the Eye of the Void, the command nexus of the Erase Fleet. Luca, Fatima, Juno, and Ayanya volunteered. No one else. As the ship rose into the stars, Earth watched. Children waved. Elders wept. Soldiers saluted. They weren't sending warriors. They were sending memories. The void was not a place. It was an absence. a silent zone in space where light bent and time slowed. The erase fleet waited there, rows of death machines humming quietly. No emotion, no thought, just a black signal. Cleanse. The stolen ship entered the void. Anya stood in front of the command node, a glowing sphere built to receive Zarvek thoughts. But this time, it received something else. Juno, blind but gifted, began to play a single melody. Notes not of battle, but of sorrow. Notes of hope buried in pain. Fatima uploaded the final data sequence, not a virus, not code, but the complete emotional map of humanity. Birth, death, joy, madness, forgiveness, sacrifice, rage, peace, and Luca stood silently, holding the memory of his mother, humming the lullaby she once sang to him before she died in the first wave of attacks. The sphere glowed, then cracked, then screamed. The erase fleet, for the first time in its ancient life, hesitated, not because it was damaged, but because it remembered. On the mothership, Valthyr felt it. He stood tall and broken. "They did it," he whispered. "They infected the void." "Then the Empire is dead," his second-in-command said. Valthyr nodded. "No, not dead. Transformed." Back in the void, the fleet began to turn, not to attack, but to protect. It shielded the human ship. It blocked out Krail's override signal, and in a final pulse of light, the fleet deleted itself. Earth watched the sky as stars blinked back into view. The darkness had lifted. The war was over. But the memory would remain. Anya returned with her team, wounded, quiet, but alive. The world had changed. Humans had not only survived the impossible, they had broken the invincible. Days later, Valthyr sent one final message to humanity. His face was tired, aged, his voice calm. "We came to make you fear us. You made us fear ourselves. We thank you." And then, he vanished. In schools, children now study the war not as a victory of guns, but a victory of heart. In the stars, no ships approach Earth anymore, only echoes of a warning. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. Don't mistake pain for surrender. Don't mistake humanity for helplessness. When they learned fear, the war was over. There were no victory parades, no explosions, no fireworks in the sky, just silence. After years of fear, loss, resistance, the world was still. And in that stillness, something powerful echoed across. The stars. Humanity had won, but they had not conquered, they had taught. The Zarvek Empire was gone, not destroyed, changed. Their ships no longer hovered over planets. Their mind weapons had shut down. Their fleets had scattered like birds after a storm. But the most important change was one no sensor could detect. The Zarvek, once cold and fearless, had learned something they never thought possible: how to feel. And in that feeling, they found fear, not fear of humans, fear of what they had forgotten. Anya stood on a quiet hilltop in northern India. Her scars had healed. The nightmares were less frequent now, but her heart still carried the weight of it all. Beside her, Juno played soft music on her instrument, a melody made from memories. Below them, a monument was being built, not of steel, but of stone, soil, glass, and tears. Every country sent pieces of their story. Every village sent memories, not to celebrate war, but to remember why they fought. News spread across the world. The last Zarvek signal had been translated. It wasn't a threat, not a warning, just a message. "We are leaving, not because we were defeated, but because you showed us something stronger than fear, to remember, to regret, to feel." On Mars, the first human colony was named Elias Base. In orbit, satellites now carried stories instead of weapons. And in the deep void, where no light had touched for centuries, A signal floated forever. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not break. And we do not fear the dark, because we bring our own light. But not all was peace. In some corners of Earth, old governments tried to rise with new power. Others feared the return of another alien threat. Some even wanted revenge, to hunt down the remaining Zarvek and erase them forever. But Anya spoke to the world through a global broadcast. She stood under a night sky, no flags behind her, no army, just her voice. We were not born invincible. We were broken, afraid, hunted, but we rose, not by destroying but by remembering who we are. If we become what they were, cold, cruel, empty, then we didn't win anything. We taught them fear, but let's also teach them mercy. In the years that followed, a strange thing happened. Small messages began arriving from distant galaxies, places the Zarvek once ruled. Not from them, but from freed species, aliens who had no names, no history, no songs. Now learning to speak, again. Now learning to live, and all of them sent the same word first. Thank you. In the archives of the Resistance, Luca wrote a book, not about war strategy, but about what it meant to be human. It was translated into 213 languages, and one day, a message came from deep space, a signal written in Zarvek code, simple and honest. We read your words, and for the first time in our history, we cried. Fatima became a peacekeeper. She traveled with a ship called Memory. It carried no weapons, only history, ready to remind anyone who forgot what fear once looked like, and how to survive it. Juno, who had never seen light, was asked once, "How did you fight without eyes?" She smiled. "Because I could hear their silence, and I could feel our pain, and pain has music too." And Ayanya? She refused power, refused fame. She built schools, wrote letters to survivors, planted gardens where drones had once fallen, and once a year she returned to the monument on the hill. She'd sit quietly and whisper to herself, "They conquered galaxies, until we taught them fear." In the stars, no new empires rose. But stories did. Humans became legend, not as gods, but as something greater, the species that could feel pain and still keep walking. The species that turned fear into fire, grief into strength, and memory into light. Somewhere, far beyond any map, a group of young Zarvek walked on a green planet they had never seen before. They had no weapons, only questions, and one of them looked up at the stars and asked, "Is that where the humans are?" The elder nodded. "Yes. And if you ever meet them," he paused and for a moment remembered what fear had once felt like. "Don't be afraid. Be humble." Because now, across the universe, one story echoed louder than any war cry. They were hunted. They were broken. They had every reason to fall, but they didn't. They stood. They remembered. And they made the galaxy remember too.